Single dad CEO accidentally calls the wrong emergency babysitter. Woman who arrives is the one he's. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain had been falling since dusk, painting the windows of Manhattan high-rises with streaks of silver. Inside a sleek apartment overlooking the city, Ethan Cole paced the hardwood floor, phone pressed to his ear, voice tight with worry. Please, just send someone. My son has a fever, 102 degrees. The sitter canceled, and I cannot leave him alone. Static crackled on the other end. The operator's voice was muffled by the storm. Sir, I think you have the wrong number. But Ethan did not hear her. He had already dropped the phone onto the counter and rushed back to the bedroom where a small boy tossed beneath the blankets. Across town, in a tiny basement apartment, Lila Mendez was sorting through unopened mail when her old cell phone buzzed. She frowned at the unfamiliar number. Hello? A man's voice came through, urgent, breaking. Please, if you are still available, I need a babysitter tonight. My boy is burning up. Apartment 25B. 42nd Street. Riverview Towers. Please hurry. Before she could reply, the line went dead. Lila stared at the phone. She had not worked as a sitter in months. She was a former art teacher between jobs, and she had been praying all week for some kind of sign. Maybe this was it. Maybe it was fate or a simple wrong call. Either way, she grabbed her worn coat, stuffed a small first aid pouch into her bag, and ran out into the rain. By the time she reached Riverview Towers, her sneakers were soaked through. The doorman glanced up as she entered, but she looked so certain, so urgent, that he simply pointed toward the elevator. When the doors opened on the 25th floor, the hallway glowed with dim golden light. Apartment 25B stood at the end, door slightly ajar. Hello? She called softly. No answer. She stepped inside. The living room was wide and modern, filled with glass and quiet. On the couch lay a child, cheeks flushed, breathing shallow. Beside him knelt a man in a white shirt rolled to the elbows, his tie loosened, his eyes frantic. I am sorry, she said quickly. I got your call. I came as fast as I could. He looked up, startled. You came from the agency? Agency? She repeated, confused. You said you needed a babysitter. For a heartbeat, they simply stared at each other, both realizing something was off. But the boy whimpered, and Lila's instincts took over. She set down her bag, gently pressed a cool cloth to the child's forehead, and murmured, It will be all right, sweetheart. Ethan hesitated, then exhaled. He did not have time to argue or ask questions. Whoever this woman was, she knew what she was doing. The fever started an hour ago, he said quietly. His name is Noah. Has he eaten? She asked. He shook his head. He refused everything. She nodded, voice calm but firm. We should keep him hydrated. Do you have any ginger, tea, or honey? In that small exchange, something shifted. Her steadiness slowed his panic. The storm outside thundered against the glass, yet inside, the room began to feel softer, safer. When Noah finally drifted into light sleep, Lila stood by the window, watching lightning split the clouds. He will be fine, she said. Children are stronger than we think. Ethan studied her for a moment. The rain traced lines down the glass, mirroring the quiet tension between them. Thank you, he said finally. I am sorry I did not even catch your name. Lila, she replied. And you are? Ethan, he answered. Ethan Cole. Neither of them spoke after that. But when she picked up her coat to leave, he said, almost against his own logic, Would you stay until morning, just to be safe? Lila hesitated. She should say no. He was a stranger. This place was far from her world, and she had come here by mistake. But then she looked at the small boy's sleeping face and nodded. Of course, she said softly. I will stay. Outside, the rain fell harder, wrapping the city in sound. Inside, a wrong phone call had just rewritten the course of 3 lives. Morning light crept through the tall windows, pale gold spreading across the marble floors of the apartment. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed and glistening. Lila woke on the couch, her neck stiff, her jacket draped over her like a blanket. For a moment she was disoriented. Then she saw the small boy curled beside her, breathing evenly. The fever had broken. Relief washed through her chest. The kitchen light flicked on. Ethan stood there, sleeves rolled up, holding 2 mugs of coffee. The man looked different in daylight, less like a headline, more like someone carrying too much weight on his shoulders. "Good morning," he said quietly. "He is better. The thermometer says 98.6. Lila smiled, rubbing her eyes. "That is perfect. Children bounce back fast." She accepted the coffee. It was strong and dark, but it felt like warmth itself. The silence between them was not awkward. It was the kind that comes after surviving a long night together. Ethan leaned against the counter, studying her. "I owe you more than coffee," he said. "I am not even sure how you found your way here." She hesitated, unsure how to explain. "You called," she said finally. "It sounded like an emergency. I just came." A faint smile touched his lips. "Then I am glad I called the wrong number." They both laughed softly, the sound breaking the tension that lingered in the air. When Noah woke, his small voice filled the apartment with life again. "Daddy, who is that?" "This is Miss Lila," Ethan said. "She helped us last night." The boy smiled sleepily. "Thank you, Miss Lila." Her heart melted. "You are welcome, sweetheart. How about some breakfast?" She searched the kitchen, quickly realizing there was little food besides protein shakes and imported coffee beans. "You live like a robot," she teased. "No cereal, no fruit, no soul." Ethan almost smiled. "I usually grab breakfast at the office." "Oh, well, not today," she said, rolling up her sleeves. "We will make pancakes." He tried to protest, but soon the kitchen smelled of butter and vanilla. Noah laughed as she flipped the first pancake too high, and it landed halfway off the pan. Ethan caught it before it fell, his hand brushing hers. For one brief second they froze eyes, meeting, time stretching thin as silk. Then Lila laughed it off and returned to the stove, cheeks flushed with color. While Noah ate, Ethan walked into his office to check emails, only to stop at the doorway. On the table, where Lila had set her bag, lay a small sketchbook. The open page showed a quick charcoal drawing. A child's face lit by lamplight, half asleep, lines tender and real. Noah's face. Ethan stared at it, something inside him softening. Lila noticed him looking when she came to collect her things. "It is just a habit," she said, embarrassed. "I draw when I cannot find the right words." You captured him perfectly," Ethan murmured. "You are an artist?" "I was," she said. "I used to teach art at Lincoln Elementary, but the program was cut. Since then I take any work I can find." Her honesty disarmed him. He had spent years surrounded by people who spoke in polished half-truths, every sentence filtered through ambition. This woman in her worn coat, with paint still on her nails, felt like a breath of fresh air he did not know he needed. When it was time for her to leave, Noah clung to her sleeve. "Will you come back?" Lila knelt to meet his eyes. "Only if your father wants me to." Ethan hesitated, looking at his son, then back at her. "Actually," he said slowly, "I do need help. My schedule is unpredictable, and Noah, he needs someone kind, someone real. Would you consider staying on, just for a while?" She blinked, caught off guard. "You mean as a babysitter?" He nodded. "Until I find a permanent one, I will pay you fairly." Lila hesitated. The sensible answer was no. She had other interviews. Bills due. A life to rebuild. But then Noah reached out and took her hand. "Please, Miss Lila?" Her resolve melted. "All right," she said softly. "Just for a while." Ethan exhaled, almost smiling. "Good, thank you." As she walked out later that morning, the city air smelled of wet pavement and distant coffee shops. She paused on the sidewalk and looked up at the tower behind her, its glass walls catching the sunlight. Somewhere high above, a man and his little boy were starting their day again. She pulled her sketchbook from her bag and added a line beneath the drawing she had made. One wrong call, one chance to belong. Then she smiled, closed the book, and stepped into the crowd, unaware that her life had already begun to change. Days turned into weeks, and what began as a temporary arrangement quietly rooted itself into their lives. Every morning, the sound of Noah's laughter echoed through the apartment before the city fully woke. Lila would arrive just after sunrise, her hair still damp from the mist, carrying a small paper bag of muffins she baked herself. Ethan, always in a pressed suit and tie, would be preparing to rush to the office, yet somehow found himself lingering by the kitchen counter a little longer each day. "Do not forget his art class at 3, he would remind her. Lila would grin, "I will not. And do not forget to eat lunch before 6. He would almost smile, then slip out the door, leaving a trail of cologne and unspoken gratitude behind. In those quiet hours, Lila transformed the penthouse. The cold, white walls slowly filled with color paper suns, watercolor sketches, and finger paintings by Noah. Where silence had once ruled, now came music, giggles, and the soft scratch of pencils on paper. One afternoon, she found a stack of unopened boxes in the hallway closet. Inside were toys still sealed in plastic, clothes with tags, untouched for months. She realized then how much of Noah's childhood had been waiting for attention. She set everything out, washed the new clothes, and turned the living room into a fort built from pillows and imagination. When Ethan returned that night, he paused at the doorway. The apartment, once pristine and sterile, now glowed with life. Noah ran to him, waving a finger painting. "Daddy, look! Miss Lila says colors can tell stories." Ethan crouched, smiling faintly. "What story is this one?" Noah pointed at a swirl of blue and orange. "This one is the storm that brought her here." Ethan looked at Lila, then really looked. The light caught the paint smudge on her wrist, the tired joy in her eyes. He had not realized how lonely his home had been until she filled it with warmth. Later that evening, as Noah slept, Ethan poured 2 mugs of tea and joined Lila on the balcony. The city stretched below them, lights shimmering like stars fallen to earth. "He has not smiled this much since his mother passed," Ethan said quietly. "You have given him back something I could not." Lila shook her head. "You gave him safety. I only gave him crayons." He looked at her for a long moment. "You gave him color, Lila. There is a difference." She did not know what to say. The night air was cool, the hum of traffic distant and low. For the first time in a long while, she felt she belonged somewhere. Over the next few days, Lila began helping Noah with a school project, a family portrait. She encouraged him to draw whatever he felt. When he proudly showed it to her, she froze. The picture showed 3 figures, hand in hand. "You, me, and Daddy," he said. "We are a family now, right?" The words struck her harder than she expected. She wanted to correct him, to say she was just a visitor, but his smile stopped her. She simply nodded and said, "That is beautiful, Noah." Still, as she cleaned the brushes that night, unease stirred inside her. This was not her world-expensive furniture, glass elevators, private schools. She was a teacher who could barely afford rent, living on borrowed time in a man's world of power and precision. When Ethan appeared behind her, sleeves rolled up, she quickly straightened. "Sorry. I was just finishing up." He studied her face. "You look worried." She forced a small laugh. "Just tired. Long day." He hesitated, then said softly, "If you ever need anything, help, money, time off, just tell me." Her throat tightened. "I do not want your charity." "It is not charity," he said. "It is gratitude." For a moment, neither spoke. The city lights flickered across their faces, 2 people from different worlds caught in the same quiet rhythm. After he left, Lila opened her sketchbook and drew again the 3 figures from Noah's painting, but this time with shadows stretching beneath them. At the edge of the page she wrote, "Do not forget where you came from." It was both a promise and a warning, because deep down she knew something this perfect could not last forever. The following week brought a quiet rhythm that felt almost like peace. Lila settled into her new routine: morning breakfasts, school drop-offs, sketching with Noah in the afternoons. Ethan's workdays stretched long, yet he always returned home in time to find his son laughing or painting under Lila's watch. The sound filled the apartment like sunlight breaking through clouds. One evening, while Lila was tidying up the art supplies, Ethan approached her with an envelope in hand. "I have something to ask," he said. His tone was calm, but his eyes held a hint of hesitation. "Next weekend is the Carter Foundation's annual gala. It is an event I host every year. Normally I bring my sister or a company partner, but this time I would like you to come with Noah, of course." Lila looked up, startled. "Me? Why?" "Because Noah adores you," he replied simply. "And because you have become part of his life. People should see that." She hesitated, wiping paint from her fingers. "Ethan, I do not belong in places like that. Those are rooms full of people who wear suits worth more than my rent." He smiled faintly. "Then you will fit in perfectly, because you are the only one who will be real." His words lingered long after he left the room. When Saturday arrived, Lila stood before her small mirror, smoothing the simple navy blue dress she had borrowed from her neighbor. She had pinned her hair neatly, her heart pounding like a drum. Ethan had sent a driver, which felt absurd enough. Stepping into the glittering ballroom of the Grand Monarch Hotel felt even more unreal. Chandeliers spilled gold light across marble floors, and every guest looked like they had stepped out of a magazine cover. Ethan, in his tailored black suit, met her at the entrance. For a moment, even he seemed caught off guard by how radiant she looked. "You clean up well," he said softly. She laughed nervously. "Let us hope no one notices the borrowed shoes." He bent slightly and whispered, "They will be too busy noticing you." The music swelled as they entered. Noah held Lila's hand tightly, marveling at the fountains and lights. Several guests approached Ethan, greeting him with the kind of polished smiles that never reached their eyes. He introduced Lila each time as a friend of the family, and she noticed how his tone softened on the word friend. Later, while Noah played near the dessert table, Lila wandered toward a display of paintings being auctioned for charity. Her gaze stopped on one, a child's drawing recreated in oil, signed by an unknown artist. The caption read, "Hope through a child's eyes." Something about it felt familiar, almost like Noah's touch. "Beautiful, is it not?" a woman's voice said beside her. Lila turned to see a tall brunette, elegant and poised, holding a champagne flute. "You must be new. I have never seen you at these events before." Lila smiled politely. "Just helping with the foundation." The woman's eyes flicked toward Ethan across the room. "Helping or something more?" Before Lila could answer, an announcement echoed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host, Ethan Cole, Chief Executive Officer of Cole Innovations and founder of the Carter Foundation." Lila froze. "Chief Executive Officer?" She turned toward the stage. Ethan stepped under the spotlight, applause rising around him. The confident man at the podium was not the gentle, tired father she had known. This was someone else entirely, a man used to commanding rooms, his voice steady and magnetic. Her pulse quickened as realization crashed over her. All this time, he had let her believe he was just a struggling single parent. The modest apartment was not modest at all, it was a penthouse. The car that had picked her up was not a rental. It was his. She had been living inside a truth wrapped in silence. The applause faded, replaced by the pounding of her heartbeat. She turned and found Ethan looking at her through the crowd, his expression unreadable. Without a word, she stepped back, her hands trembling. The chandelier light blurred through unshed tears. She needed air. She needed to breathe. Lila slipped out of the ballroom, the echo of his voice still following her, steady, powerful, distant. In the corridor, she leaned against the cool marble wall, whispering to herself, "You fool. You never even asked who he was." Behind her, the sound of applause swelled again. Inside that golden room, he was a man the world admired. Out here, in the quiet hallway, she was just the woman who had believed in a stranger's wrong call. The marble corridor stretched long and silent as Lila hurried away from the ballroom, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Each step echoed with disbelief. She had spent weeks inside his world and never once suspected who he truly was. Chief Executive Officer. The words felt foreign in her mouth, sharp as glass. She pushed open a side door leading to the terrace. Cool air rushed over her, carrying the faint hum of traffic from below. The city lights blurred as tears filled her eyes. She felt foolish for trusting him, for believing their small, ordinary moments meant anything beyond convenience. Behind her, footsteps approached. "Lila," Ethan called quietly. She did not turn around. "Please, listen." "There is nothing to say," she replied, her voice trembling. "You let me believe you were just a father doing his best. You never told me who you were." He exhaled slowly. "I wanted you to know me as a man, not a headline. I did not want our lives to turn into another transaction." "You lied by omission," she said. "You let me stand in that room, surrounded by people who knew everything while I knew nothing. Do you have any idea how small that feels?" Ethan stepped closer, but she moved away. "Lila, I never meant to hurt you. The night we met, I was desperate. I did not plan any of this." She shook her head. "And yet you planned to keep the truth hidden. That was a choice." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city below glittered like 1,000 broken promises. Finally, Ethan said, "You were the first person to treat me like I mattered, not my company, not my wealth me. I was afraid that if you knew, you would walk away." Her eyes met his, full of pain. "You were right." The words landed like a door closing. She brushed past him, heading for the elevator. By the time he followed, she was gone. That night, back in her small apartment, Lila sat at her tiny kitchen table, the sketchbook open before her. She turned to the page where she had drawn Noah, smiling under a storm of blue and orange. Her tears smudged the pencil lines. On the next page she wrote a single sentence: "Kindness does not need to come from power." The next morning, she called a friend at a local art center and asked about teaching part-time classes. Her voice was steady but hollow. "Anything to keep busy," she said. Days passed without contact. Ethan sent messages she did not answer. Flowers arrived at her door that she never opened. Each evening, she tried to focus on her students, on simple routines, on surviving the emptiness that followed her like a shadow. Meanwhile, in the high-rise apartment above the city, Ethan stared at the empty chair beside Noah's art table. The walls seemed to echo with absence. Noah's laughter had dimmed. He asked about her every night before bed. "Daddy, when will Miss Lila come back?" Ethan had no answer. He only said, "Soon, buddy." "I hope soon." But deep down he knew that hope alone might not be enough. He had built empires, but he had never learned how to rebuild trust. And somewhere across town, under the soft glow of a street lamp, Lila walked home after class, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. Her heart was heavy, yet beneath the pain, a quiet strength began to stir, the strength of someone who had loved honestly, even if the world around her had not. Rain returned to the city a week later, soft and steady, drumming against windows and pavements, as if echoing every thought Lila had tried to silence. She spent her evenings at the community art center, guiding small hands through colors and shapes, pretending that her heart was not still caught somewhere between guilt and longing. The children called her Miss Lila, and their laughter helped her breathe. But when she locked up each night, the silence pressed hard. One afternoon, she was cleaning brushes when she heard a familiar voice at the doorway. "You really do bring color wherever you go." Ethan stood there, rain on his coat, eyes tired but gentle. She froze. For a moment, she could not speak. "How did you find me?" she asked. "Noah told me about the art center," he said. "He missed you. I did too." Lila turned away, setting the brushes down carefully. "You should not be here." "Maybe not," he said, "but I needed to see you." He stepped closer, voice quiet. "You were right to be angry. I hid behind what I thought would protect me, my name, my company, my image. But none of it means anything when I cannot look at my son and explain why the best person in his life walked away." Lila folded her arms, trying to stay steady. "You cannot fix this with words, Ethan. You built walls between us. Trust is not a contract you can rewrite." "I know," he said. "That is why I came to show you something." "Oh." From his coat pocket, he pulled out a folded drawing. It was Noah's family portrait, the same one from weeks ago, now covered with new crayon marks. There were still 3 figures, but this time, each held a heart drawn between them. At the bottom, in uneven letters, was written, "Please come home, Miss Lila." Her breath caught. "He did this?" Ethan nodded. "Every night before bed." His voice broke slightly. "He said home feels smaller without you." Lila pressed a hand to her mouth, tears rising again. The ache she had tried to bury cracked open. She looked at Ethan, no suit, no pretense. Just a man standing in the rain with a picture that spoke louder than any apology. "I did not come here to ask for forgiveness," he continued. "I came to take responsibility. You showed me what kindness looks like when it costs something. I do not want to hide behind my title anymore. I just want to earn back your respect and maybe, if I am lucky, your trust." Lila studied him, unsure whether to believe. "And if I say it is too late? Then I will still thank you," he said softly. "Because you changed both of us. You taught my son how to love honestly. And you reminded me that money cannot buy peace." She looked down at the drawing again, her tears falling onto the paper. "Tell Noah I will visit soon," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. That will mean the world to him. He turned to leave, but before he reached the door, she said quietly, "Ethan." He stopped. "Do not send flowers again. Next time, if you want to reach me, bring paint instead." A small, hopeful smile touched his face. "Then I guess I will see you soon, Miss Lila." When he left, Lila stood in the quiet room, holding the damp drawing close. For the first time in weeks, she let herself smile through the tears. The rain outside no longer sounded like sorrow, it sounded like a beginning. A few days later, the art center received an envelope with no return address. Inside was an invitation printed on thick ivory paper. The Carter Foundation presents The Art of Hope, a charity exhibition for children. At the bottom, written by hand, were the words, "Curated by Ethan Cole, inspired by Miss Lila Mendez." Lila stared at it for a long time, unsure whether to feel honored or terrified. She had not spoken to him since their encounter in the rain. Still, something inside her whispered that this was not just another event, it was an answer. That Saturday evening, she arrived at the gallery wearing a simple white dress smudged with a faint trace of blue paint she could not scrub away. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. The walls were lined with children's paintings from across the city, bright, imperfect, full of joy. But at the very center stood one enormous canvas, surrounded by soft light. It was Noah's storm painting, the one that had once hung in the apartment, but now it was finished. The blue and orange swirls had blended into a brilliant sunrise. Beneath it, in careful lettering, read, "Dedicated to Miss Lila, who taught us that love is the most honest color of all." Her eyes filled instantly. Around her, guests whispered, recognizing her name, pointing gently as she stepped closer. She could hardly breathe. Then Ethan appeared beside her. He wore no tie, no mask of authority, just a quiet smile and eyes full of humility. "I told Noah we would finish his painting together," he said. "He wanted to show you first." Lila swallowed hard. "You did not have to do this." "I did," Ethan replied, "because you were right. Words cannot fix what I broke, but actions can." He guided her toward the stage where reporters waited, but this time his hand trembled slightly. "Before this exhibition opens," he said into the microphone, "I need to thank someone who changed how I see everything. This collection is not about success or wealth. It is about second chances and the courage it takes to give them." He turned to Lila, his voice soft but steady. "You once told me kindness does not need to come from power. Tonight, I wanted to prove that power can serve kindness instead." The audience applauded, flashes from cameras lighting the room like stars. Lila felt every heartbeat echo in her ears. When he stepped down, she met him halfway. "You really planned all this for a lesson?" she asked. "For a promise," he said quietly, "that I will never hide behind titles again. Not with you, not with anyone." Her lips curved into a trembling smile. "You always did have a way of turning storms into sunlight." He smiled back. "Only because you showed me how." "Huh." Noah appeared from behind the curtain, holding two small paintbrushes tied together with a ribbon. "Daddy said these are for you," he said. "So you can always paint with us." Lila knelt to hug him, tears spilling freely. "Thank you, Noah." Ethan watched, the weight in his chest finally lifting. For the first time in years, he felt human, not a headline, not a brand, just a father, a man, and maybe, finally, someone worthy of forgiveness. As applause filled the room, Lila stood between them, holding one paintbrush in each hand. The noise around her faded, leaving only the steady rhythm of her heart and the faint, beautiful truth that sometimes redemption begins with a single stroke of color. The exhibition ended with warm applause and flashes of cameras. But when the guests drifted away, the gallery became quiet again. Only a few lights remained on, casting soft reflections on the polished floor. Lila stood near the center painting, still trying to absorb what had happened. Her name had been spoken, her story honored, yet her heart felt fragile, unsure if it was ready to trust the man who had once broken it. Ethan approached her slowly, his steps careful. He no longer looked like a powerful executive. Under the dim light, he seemed simply human, tired, hopeful, vulnerable. "You stayed," he said gently. "I was not sure you would." Lila smiled faintly. "Neither was I." He exhaled. "Thank you for coming. You made this night real." For a moment, they stood in silence, surrounded by color and quiet. Then he took a deep breath. "There is something else I want to show you." He nodded toward the far end of the gallery, where a small curtain hid another space. "Curious," Lila followed. When the curtain lifted, she gasped. It was a miniature exhibition of children's artwork, each painting labeled with the name of a student from her community art center. On the wall above them was a silver plaque that read, "The Mendez Program for Creative Education, founded in honor of Miss Lila Mendez." Her hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan, what is this?" "It is your work," he said. "Your classes inspired Noah, and now they will help hundreds of other children. The foundation will fund the program every year. You will have a team, a studio, and the freedom to teach the way you believe in." Tears blurred her vision. "You did all this?" He nodded. "Not to impress you. To do what you would have done if you had my resources." She turned toward him, emotion breaking through her calm. "Ethan, I do not know what to say." "Then do not say anything," he whispered. "Just tell me if there is a place for me in your life again." The question hung in the air, trembling like the last note of a song. Lila looked at him, remembering every moment, the night of the wrong call, the storm, the laughter, the silence, and the pain. She thought of Noah, of the way he drew families with hearts connecting them. Slowly, she stepped closer. "You hurt me," she said quietly. "But you also learned. And that matters more than perfection." Ethan's voice cracked. "So is that a yes?" She smiled through tears. "It is a beginning." He reached out his hand, uncertain, and she took it. The tension that had haunted them for months melted into warmth. Around them, the colors of the children's paintings seemed to glow brighter, as if celebrating their choice. Noah came running from the hallway, his little shoes echoing across the marble floor. "Miss Lila, Daddy said we can paint at home again." Lila knelt, opening her arms wide. "Then I guess I had better bring more colors." Ethan watched them, his heart full. The night outside the gallery shimmered with rain, but this time the sound was gentle, like applause from the heavens. Inside, beneath the painting that had started it all, 3 people stood together, no secrets, no walls, just honesty, forgiveness, and the quiet promise of a new family taking shape. Spring arrived early that year, wrapping the city in soft light and the scent of blooming magnolias. Months had passed since the night of the exhibition, yet its echo lingered in every corner of their lives. The art center was now alive each day, with children painting, laughing, and filling the walls with color. Lila had become its director, though she still preferred to sit cross-legged on the floor with the students, guiding tiny hands through swirls of paint. Every Friday afternoon, Ethan and Noah would stop by after school. Noah would run straight to the back room, shouting, "Miss Lila, we brought snacks." Ethan would follow behind, his tie loosened, his eyes softer than before. One evening, after the last child left, Lila locked up and turned to find Ethan waiting by the doorway. He held a small box wrapped in paper, the color of the evening sky. "What is this?" she asked with a smile. "Something that belongs in this place," he said. She opened it carefully. Inside was a silver key resting on a silk ribbon. "A key?" she asked, puzzled. He nodded. "To the new studio across the street. The foundation wants to expand, but I wanted you to have the first choice of what to call it." Her eyes glistened. "Ethan, this is too much." He shook his head. "It is not a gift. It is a promise that what we build together will always have room to grow." For a long moment, neither spoke. The late sunlight poured through the window, painting everything in gold. Then he took a deep breath. "There is something else I should ask you," he said. He pulled another box from his pocket, smaller this time. Inside was a simple ring, silver with a faint engraving of a paintbrush and a star. Lila froze, her breath caught. "Ethan," he smiled, nervous but certain. You once said storms can bring the right people together if we are brave enough to stand in the rain. I want to stand in every storm with you from this day forward. Tears welled in her eyes. The world seemed to quiet, as if even the city paused to listen. She nodded slowly, unable to find her voice. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Ethan. Noah burst into the room at that exact moment, holding a cupcake covered in too many sprinkles. Did she say yes? He asked, crumbs on his face. Ethan laughed, lifting him into his arms. She did. Noah clapped his hands. Then can we all live together now? Lila smiled through her tears. I think we already do. The next week, their wedding took place not in a ballroom but in the art studio, surrounded by children's drawings taped to the walls. The vows were simple. Ethan promised honesty. Lila promised faith. Noah promised to share his crayons. When the ceremony ended, sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the colors of hundreds of paper hearts the children had hung from the ceiling. As they stood together, hands entwined, Lila looked up and whispered, "One wrong call, one right forever." Ethan kissed her forehead gently. The best mistake we ever made. Outside, the city shimmered under a warm spring rain, the same kind that had brought them together once before. Inside the small studio filled with laughter and light, a new family began there forever, not in perfection, but in truth, kindness, and the quiet miracle of love that had found them through a single, fated mistake.